But then, something shifts. They pull away. Or maybe you do. You feel triggered, abandoned, confused. You meet someone. It feels different this time. There's chemistry, laughter, a feeling of being seen. You begin to... Suddenly you're saying things you don't mean, or shutting down completely. And once again, it ends in pain. You're left staring at the pieces, asking the same question. Why does this keep happening to me? Here's the truth. No one teaches you. It's not fate. It's a pattern. A deep, invisible pattern, rooted in the parts of you that you've never faced. This isn't just about bad choices or toxic people. This is about an ancient wound, silently running the show, until you finally turn around and face it. And in this video, we're going to do just that. Engagement loop. Stay with me, because once you see this hidden pattern, you'll never look at your relationships the same way again. That quote from Jung isn't just philosophy, it's a map, because buried beneath your heartbreaks, ghostings, trust issues, and toxic cycles, there is something deeper at play. And the unconscious pattern, and like clockwork, it keeps repeating itself. Not because you want it to, but because you haven't seen it clearly. This pattern was not born in your adult relationships. It began in childhood. Before you even had the words to describe your emotions, you were already learning how love works, what you needed to do to be loved. What parts of you were too much? What parts had to be hidden to feel safe? If love meant approval, you learned to perform. If love meant silence, you learned to shut down. If love came with fear or inconsistency, you learned to chase, to fix, to cling, or to run, and now as an adult, you call it chemistry. But in truth, it's familiarity. You're drawn to what you subconsciously recognize, not because it's good for you, but because it fits the blueprint you never questioned. This is the dark pattern. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like picking the wrong partners. Other times it's self-sabotage. Sudden loss of interest, anxiety that makes you push people away, or clinging too tightly and smothering the connection. And here's the hardest part. You might not even realize you're doing it, because the unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in repetition, so the same story keeps playing out. Only the names and faces change. Engagement loop. But what if there's a way to break the pattern? What if you could finally see it and start choosing something better? Let's go deeper. You weren't born doubting love. You learned it. From the subtle and not so subtle ways love was modeled, withheld, or distorted in your early years. This is where your attachment blueprint was formed. If a caregiver was inconsistent, loving one moment, cold the next, you may have developed anxious attachment. You crave closeness, but constantly fear abandonment. If you were punished for expressing emotions or taught to be independent too early, you might have formed avoidant attachment. You fear relying on others, so you keep distance even when you long for intimacy. And if love came with chaos, unpredictability, emotional neglect, or trauma, your nervous system learned to see love as unsafe. This becomes the emotional template you unconsciously seek out again and again. You don't choose the person who's healthy. You choose what feels familiar, even if it hurts. Because to your subconscious, pain that's predictable feels safer than love that's unknown. This is the dark pattern. You're not chasing love. You're chasing resolution to an old wound, a childhood story playing out on repeat. And until you become conscious of it, it will keep running your relationships and ruining them. You think you're choosing your partners freely, but your subconscious is doing most of the work. If you're anxiously attached, you might fall for people who are emotionally unavailable, not because you enjoy the pain, but because their distance feels familiar. It mirrors a childhood wound you're still trying to heal. If you're avoidantly attached, you might attract people who want emotional closeness, only to feel suffocated and withdraw when they get too near. And the cycle continues. Chase, retreat, confusion, collapse. Here's the dark pattern. You're not seeking love. You're seeking familiarity. You're not trying to connect. You're trying to resolve something old. It's why you ignore red flags, why you overgive, why you sabotage intimacy just when it feels real. You're not broken. You're reenacting an emotional script written years ago, a script you didn't even know you memorized. But the most dangerous part? You think it's just how love works. This is where most people get stuck, in cycles of bad luck, blaming others, or believing they're the problem. But it's not about blame, it's about awareness. Because once you can see the pattern, really see it, you can start to break it. And what comes next is freedom. You're not broken, you're patterned. And the beautiful truth is, patterns can be reprogrammed. Carl Jung taught that healing doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration, from making the unconscious conscious. Once you begin to see your pattern clearly, without shame or judgment, everything starts to shift, not overnight, not in a dramatic revelation, but in quiet, powerful ways. You pause before reacting. You notice when you're triggered, and instead of lashing out or shutting down, you get curious. You ask, what is this really about? You begin to realize, this isn't about your partner being distant. It's about your fear of abandonment. This isn't about your partner needing space. It's about your fear of being engulfed and losing yourself. These are not just relationship problems. These are self-awareness opportunities. And every time you choose to respond instead of react, you reclaim a piece of yourself that was lost in the chaos of your past. But how do you begin that journey? That's what we'll uncover next. To heal the pattern, you have to return to the place it began. Not to relive the pain, but to reclaim the part of you that got left behind. That part is your inner child, the one who first felt the sting of disconnection and made unconscious decisions about love, worth, and safety. Decisions like, I have to be perfect to be loved. People always leave. My feelings are too much. It's safer not to need anyone. These beliefs were once protections. Now, they're your prison. Healing begins when you stop trying to fix your relationships and start building a relationship with yourself. Instead of chasing validation, you learn to witness your own wounds. Instead of demanding others meet your unmet needs, you learn to honor them yourself. Real love isn't found in someone else's eyes. It's found when you can finally look at your own reflection and not flinch. When you integrate the abandoned parts of yourself, the child who cried for attention, the teen who closed off, the adult who overcompensated, you stop needing someone else to complete you. You show up whole. That's the moment relationships begin to feel different. Not perfect, but real. You stop repeating the past. You stop reacting from wounds. You stop chasing, proving, pleasing, or punishing. Instead, you become a safe place for yourself and for the people you love. Carl Jung said, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. And so, the pattern that once sabotaged your love life, it becomes your path to transformation, because now you see it, and what you can see, you can heal.